Welcome back after the break. Now we've been joined in on my left. We have with us Ghalib Balsa. So thank you very much for taking out your time. Gentleman needs no introduction. He's a senior ambassador and he's also worked in that capacity in various countries. And we've also been joined in by...
We've also been joined by Ms. Shamim Shaul. She's a Hurriyat leader and Secretary General Kashmir Tehreek-e-Khawateen. Thank you, ma'am, for being with us today.
Thank you very much.
Of course, Faisal, continuing our discussion before the break, of course, we were talking about the many challenges that we now face in terms of actually making sure that the Kashmir issue reaches its logical conclusion and the suffering of the Kashmiri people ends. But we see, as you mentioned earlier, that India leaves no stone unturned in making sure that it violates further rules and laws and actually rubs in people's faces the fact that it can do whatever it wants. And as we mentioned earlier, the fact that Mr. Narendra Modi actually laid the foundation stone of the Ayodhya temple at the site of the Babri Masjid proves the fact there's just thumping noses in of course, the international community's face. And it's something that they're just saying that on the 5th of August, no other date, on the 5th of August, this is something that they're doing and they can get away with it.
The point is, again, since it's been there for such a long time and this issue, it was totally mishandled by their courts and I think they were under the influence. And there was a time when people used to think that India is the largest democracy. But honestly speaking, when you read about it and looking at the current situation, I guess one thing is very important, and that is that India is no more secular. India is a fast state. Narendra Modi is somebody who is exactly working on the lines of Hitler, I guess.
Absolutely,
exactly following what Israelis have done in Palestine. And the worst part is that the entire global community is silent. Now, that's what the point is.
Right, absolutely. I'd like to include Mr. Shariar after the discussion. Mr. Shariar, what we discussed earlier and what I was talking about, of course, the fact that the foundation stone, as you know, has been laid of the Ayodhya temple. And this is something that it seems like India is basically saying to the world that it can actually get away with anything, that they're doing anything they want. And the international community, as before, has sort of proven the fact that it really isn't really doing much. What do you have to say about that?
Well, as I mentioned earlier, that as a Pakistani and as an ordinary human, we need to understand one thing, and that is India first. When we talk of India, don't forget, they say in today's competitive arena, economic prosperity will design the course of action and will have its impact on the rest of the key stakeholders. So as a second largest market, then largest democratic country, and then don't forget that the role which India of late has played, especially when it comes to conveying a loud and clear message through inducting relevant expertise in relevant regions across the globe. For example, in 1980s, India initiated the need that Indian myth and Indian narrative needs to be conveyed in such a manner, in tactful manner, where the entire globe should become either start believing in their concept or become their voice. They successfully did that, and what happens now that when you talk of any newspaper, any media house, Indians are playing pivotal role in those organizations. So now the challenge for us as a Pakistani is that we need to convey to the prosperous world, and especially to UN, that why UN, prior to UN, League of Nations failed. When Versailles Treaty was imposed in 1919, what was the repercussion of that? Third and most important, that this particular initiative of Modi is conveying a message to the entire globe that they are above everything. So now our role is to make the whole world realize through proactive diplomatic initiatives by engaging all the key stakeholders across the globe. And why I'm emphasizing more on two most important segments of human lives, one is academia and the other is social media, where you need to engage youth. For example, the recent draconian law UAPA, under which, for example, classic example of is Asia Andarabi, behind the bar since 12 long years, along with other female as well. And the only crime of other two women was that they posted something on Twitter and then on Facebook, and they mentioned Burhan Wani's name on their Twitter, and they have mentioned martyr on that. And because of that, 8 to 10 years of rigorous imprisonment, and it can even be converted into lifetime imprisonment
Even if his
too.
picture was found in any house during the search operation,
Absolutely.
those people were
so
tortured
now
too.
my question is that on the one side, the prosperous world is asking us that sustainable development goals are the order of the day and you need to fulfill that. Goal 16 and 17 talks about human rights. So my question is that on the one side they are emphasizing on one point, they do this, and on the other side they are not even bothered. And this criminal negligence and silence is again asking for trouble. The entire Europe has gone through hell in the shape of Second World War, and we are constantly reminding that it's about humanity, it's about the prosperity of the entire globe, and most important thing, when you subjugate people, when you pressurize them, when you violate their rights, and when you don't provide them, which you have already committed as a responsible state, for example, India. I would emphasize as one of the stakeholders that at this particular juncture, these initiatives need to be taken to all those levels where it can have an impact, and then somehow the international pressure needs to be taken to that level where India start realizing that whatever they did, for example, the architect of this 35A and 370 abrogation is who? Is obviously Netanyahu. He is the architect. What he did in West Bank, Gaza and Jericho, Indians are doing the same in occupied Kashmir.
Right.
So as a chairman, where I am having this liberty of genuine members of all the key stakeholders, all the political parties from upper house to lower house, we have made it a point that with academia, with genuine stakeholders, we have started knocking at the door of those who matter the most. We have started writing to Pope. We are reaching out to human rights international organizations, UN Secretary General, UNHCR High Commissioner, and we are also trying to reach out to diplomatic corps in Pakistan. We want to make them realize that if you somehow unable to take notice of this, then one thing is for sure, the entire global peace which is at stake, if you're unable to play a proper role in it, then God forbid, one thing which I must admit, that the entire globe peace is very, very much at stake, and alarming bells have already begun, because this Ladakh incident which took place between
It should not be
China
taken
and
lightly,
India,
sir.
it shouldn't be taken lightly at all.
Absolutely.
Khurram Dastagir Saab, now you have held such important posts. For example, you were the defense minister. Now my point is, sir, that whatever Pakistan could have done, whenever you talk to people from various fields of life, they said we could have done a lot better. And very rightly pointed out by the Honorable Minister that social media in general, the language primarily, that is something of utmost importance. And unfortunately, the way the Indians have grabbed, and they have in fact shown the world white in the form of a black, and people have believed that. Whereas our genuine case of Kashmir has been at the back burner for almost 73 years now. Where did we go wrong then?
It's this comprehension that since the question of Kashmir began right at the onset of the Cold War, just after the end of Second World War, we have been locked, I think, as a nation, maybe in some sense our diplomacy, in that pattern, not realizing how things have changed. The non-aligned India has been for the past 15 years a strategic partner of the United States. And it's something that the US has, 2 years ago in its strategic review, actually admitted that India is its strategic ally and it's supposed to police the so-called Indo-Pacific region. It is these new shifting alliances that we have not really comprehended. And ultimately, what was discussed earlier, that the bipolar world during the Cold War, now again new poles are arising with the rise of China principally, but also Russia, is that we should be taking advantage of those. And India, which interestingly has been playing both sides, it was friend of Palestine and also friend of Israel. But now, as we just saw in Iran kicking out India from Chabahar, is that India's alliance with the United States is having consequences. Iran has asked it to choose whether you go with the Americans or are you going to go with us. So it's it's not that India is really isolated. It's just that their strategic decision to go with the United States has consequences. Similarly, our now much deeper relationship with China is going to have consequences.
Right.
And it already has a consequence, which India never foresaw, was that in eastern Kashmir, in Ladakh, its decisions on 5th of August 2019 had direct consequences in Ladakh. So it's these new opportunities of new alliances and new openings. Pakistan did begin to have a new dialogue with Russia back in 2014. The China relationship is much deeper. It's this realization that the world, which has been seeing Pakistan through Afghanistan's eyes, has to see Pakistan differently. It has to choose new alliances. The second, I think, opportunity, which you correctly pointed out, is to be able to project visual images of Kashmir. I think we have a tremendous opportunity, if this government wants to move on it, is that 2 Kashmiri photographers won the Pulitzer Prize for photography this year in April. And their images, those images of Kashmir, these images of state repression of Kashmiris, were plastered around the world, communicated around the world. It's things like this that we have to now take up. And it's something, again, since my chairman is here, I'm also a member of the Kashmir Committee, is for not only, as I said, a renewed and more vigorous diplomacy, is to begin to use our parliamentarians more effectively around the world to speak to their colleagues and speak to them with help of these new images of Kashmir that we have. I mean, that's really going to be very useful. And again, Pakistan has to start thinking of new ways of diplomacy through new alliances. One of the progress that we made was in 2017 when we became a full member of the Shanghai Cooperation Organization. It's these kind of new alliances that have to be built for us to be able to, as I said at the beginning, to be able to help our Kashmiri brothers and sisters achieve their just cause of self-determination. And of course, that can only happen if Pakistan is strong, not only diplomatically, but also in terms of media, in terms of how it reaches out to the world.
Right, of course, and like you mentioned, the usage of such media and such images is extremely important in actually shaping the opinion and of course influencing other state actors and other alliances in the world and making sure that they actually realize what's happening there. And it's very important not just through social media but
It's
on
more about
other
creating
platforms as
perceptions
well.
now.
Yes,
Exactly.
it is. Mr. Ghalib Iqbal, I'd like to come to you in the fact that when we talk about the fact that other state actors and their opinions and the way that they look at the situation really matters as to what is the way forward with Kashmir. But when we also see, especially since the abrogation of Article 370 and 35A, that India now can even actually further claim the fact that this is just an internal issue, not even a bilateral issue, just their matter, nobody else should speak in the matter. We've seen that the US has offered mediation before. We've seen other countries say that they'd like to actually play a role in helping the people of Kashmir. But when you have India's stance, which is gaining more momentum with the revocation of these articles, how do you think can we actually tangibly involve other partners in the international community in making sure that the suffering ends?
I'm not sure if what your contention is, probably that is a reality which the international community understands. Okay? Because we have been confronted with a situation, Kashmir has been confronted with a situation. We can endlessly talk about the theoretical part that they have abrogated, revoked the articles, they have done 370, 35A, all these things. It does not matter. The ground realities are totally different from our perception. We need to change our perception. Okay, we need to understand. We have been confronted with a situation. Just like after 9/11, the world was confronted with a situation, irrespective of the fact whether there was a conspiracy theory or whether it was the Saudis or the Taliban or any other community which did what they did in New York. So this needs to be handled a bit differently. I think what Khurram Dastagir Sahab was saying, what the chairman Sahab was saying, probably we lack badly in public diplomacy. Okay, it's not the social media alone. Social media is just a small part of public diplomacy. We have missed the bus. We have lost our public diplomacy. As far as the conventional diplomacy is concerned, Pakistan is excellent, I can tell you. We can beat any diplomat around the globe. But when it comes to public diplomacy, I think we have lost vis-a-vis India. We have lost vis-a-vis the Western countries. Chinese have very successfully used their public diplomacy, but not for enhancing their influence. Now, second thing, we are looking at Kashmir as an issue which confronts the Kashmiris and the Pakistanis. Okay, we need to go and start looking at out-of-box solutions. Beyond that point, we will start seeing different opportunities, and if we do not get opportunities, we will be able to create opportunities. That is diplomacy. We have not been thinking outside the box at the moment. India, I tell you, will not have a bashing from the global community because of the large market they have over there. The jobs which they secure for the Western countries over there, the Western countries are looking for their job security for their people to earn votes over there. You need to look at 2 or 3 different things. I think if we start looking at, first thing, the embassies should be advised, Pakistan embassies abroad, in a very subtle manner, that the communities living abroad, they should stop associating themselves with the Pakistani political parties. They need to associate themselves with the local political parties. They need to become the Canadians of Pakistani origin, the British of Pakistani origin, the Americans of Pakistani origin. They need to support the congressmen, the mayors, and all tiers of politics over there. We would rather have 2 Pakistani origin foreigners sitting in a parliament rather than having a procession of 2,000 people shouting for Kashmir outside their parliament.
Okay.
You need to tell them, you need to talk to them, and you need to convince them. Secondly, I have said it earlier also, and I'm going to repeat it in your program also. RSS, we can crib about it as much as we want, but we need to take certain concrete steps. And the only concrete step which comes to my mind at the moment is that RSS being a fascist organization, RSS being a criminal organization, RSS being a terrorist organization, needs to be declared a terrorist organization by Pakistani parliament. They should be declared a terrorist organization by parliament. Other countries will follow, if not immediately, maybe after a few years. Third thing, the Declaration of 1960, it talks about colonialism, and it talks about subjugation, and it talks about people who have the right to live freely. And Kashmir is a typical case which falls into that category. They are allowed to go for freedom struggle, and the member states are authorized and allowed to help them. Why can't the countries help them? Last point which I would like to make it is about the governments in exile. There are a lot of secessionist movements going on in India. Yeah. Give a jolt to India. Let India bleed and make them move, make a wrong move. They have already done that in Ladakh at the line of actual control. Make them move a wrong move at a line of control.
Yes.
Support the governments in exile for Kashmir, for all the secessionist movement. Do it, and make sure that they have their offices or the governments in exile in another country, not in Pakistan. Support them as much as you can. When you start supporting them, you are creating chaos in the status quo. Okay, and once you create a chaos in the status quo, that is when you start seeing the opportunities. In diplomacy, you need to have a chaos at some stage so that the country can grab the new opportunities, and this is the right time. India has made so many mistakes vis-a-vis China, vis-a-vis Bangladesh, Nepal, Sri Lanka, Pakistan, Maldives,
right,
and
South
Bhutan.
region.
So there is a consensus, and I would also recommend one thing, that our foreign minister or special envoy should make a quick visit to all the SAARC countries, maybe 2 days visit to all the countries, 2 hours, 3 hours, everywhere. Reconnect with these countries. You have an opportunity. There is a vacuum vis-a-vis the good wishes towards India,
Right.
okay, that vacuum needs to be filled in, and it should be filled in by none else but Pakistan.
Right, of course, these are really important steps, Faisal, that we can actually take
I
for
think
the way
this is
forward. We
the
were
practical
discussing
approach,
solutions.
and one thing which is very important, since Ambassador Saab mentioned about the new alignments, and he also talked about the current situation, and as they say, hit the iron when it's red hot. So the point is that this is the time. Looking at the current situation, ma'am, with India and Bangladesh, India, Nepal, India, Bhutan, India, Maldives, India, Sri Lanka, India, Iran, India, Pakistan, and India, China. So I think this is not a very good time for the Indians at the moment. Maybe the Kashmiri people, they've been heard, and a lot is happening on that front as well. Now, ma'am, your take, since there's a lot of Pakistani diaspora, Kashmiri diaspora in particular, in Belgium, in England, in USA, and elsewhere in Europe and everywhere. And we always hear that now this important area, that they should not be from PMLN or PMLQ or PTI or Pakistan People's Party. They should be there as Pakistanis, and if they are voting for them, then be there, you know, be the weakness. Your take, ma'am. Are you people doing enough in that regard?
Thank you very much for inviting me in such a wonderful program. I would like, in front of Chairman Parliamentary Committee, to tell you that this is the ground reality, what I have seen in Kashmir and what is going on. First of all, the reality is that they are killing people. We are talking about the people of Jammu and Kashmir, but the question is, are they able to vote for the plebiscite? Are they able to vote for the referendum? No, they will not be able to vote for referendum because time has gone. We have to save the people, then we have to see these alternatives you have, the relationship between the different countries. India is trying to kill the people and make the society crippled, and then they will call you, they will invite the United Nations, come and have a referendum, and there will be no such a population. Either they will be the crippled population, the people with the pellets, the half widows, the people who are having no legs, no arms, mentally frustrated. The time, it is the high time for the people of Pakistan, for the government of Pakistan to take 3 steps. When you are talking about this diaspora, they are doing wonderful. From 5th of August 2019, they came on the streets in thousands and hundreds. And it is because of that the pressure was built outside. But it is not enough. It's the people of Pakistan. We are looking towards this country because they are the stakeholders. This is the party, as India is there. When India is inside Kashmir along with 100,000 Indian troops, why not Pakistan? They have to come to the rescue of the people. This is the high time to give us support. This is the high time to come forward. This is high time to call United Nations Security Council session. This is high time for OIC to go to the International Court of this Court of Criminals. Don't allow Modi to go outside India. When he was Chief Minister of Gujarat, he was not allowed to go to United Nations, to Belgium, to Brussels, to European Union, to
Visa was
UK,
denied?
because it was said that he's a criminal. The genocide in
So
Gujarat.
what changed the status now, ma'am?
Yes, please.
Why the status of Modi was changed then once he became the Prime Minister?
Because it is the economic ties between the countries. The economic tie between the different countries, the economic relationship. This time the world is the economic world. They are looking to their own interests, but it is the Pakistan's proactive diplomacy. They had to go to the diplomatic corridors, and they had to activate those corridors where they can build the pressure.
Right.
It is the high time for them to go there and to build the pressure along with the diaspora and along with the people of. The people of Jammu and Kashmir are looking towards Pakistan as the stakeholder to take this case with the international community.
Right.
It is a high time. Otherwise, they are gaining time. India is gaining time, as you said, that they have fractured the state of Jammu and Kashmir into 2 territories, and it is directly Jammu and Kashmir. Jammu and Kashmir is under the Delhi rule, and what they will do now, in future they will do this domicile certificate. They will allow the non-state certificate holders, the Indians, to come to live in the different parts of, and they will be the safe zones along with the arms, and then there will be communal rights. And it happened in the 80s, if you will see in 75, in the 80s, the communal rights between Muslims and the Hindus, and they compelled the people of Muradabad, the Ahmedabad, the Gujarat to vacate from their areas, and they were weakened economically. The strategy is same to make the Kashmiri people economically very weak so that they will leave the state. But we have no option. We cannot go to India because they are killing the people there as the minorities and the Kashmiris. We cannot cross the LOC because this is not the option. We had to sit there, and it is your responsibility to come to help.
Right, and Faisal, of course, as ma'am also pointed out, the fact that, you know, it boils down to economics is really important, but we also see that so many billions of dollars of trade that's going on with India are actually stained with the blood of the Kashmiris as well. This is what the international community needs to realize
in Kashmir,
also.
Practically, they're right. I mean, when you talk about these orchards, they've cut down those trees of apples and you name it. I mean, the
and
kind
of course their own industries, the
strategy,
handicraft
because this is
industries are
exactly
getting
right. You're
affected.
very right that they're trying to make sure that all those living inside Kashmir, all the Muslims, they should be crippled economically, and that's how they want to move on. So now talking about the issue of Ayodhya, and that is something very important. I fail to understand, and this is also I asked you initially, why Modi has chosen this particular day. What exactly is brewing in his mind?
Right. Of course, Faisal, like we talked about this earlier as well, that this is basically rubbing a fact in, you know, because of, it's not just something with anti-Muslims, it's something which is like, of course, affecting the world and the globe as well. And
Anti-Muslims
saying
and
it to the world that they can
never forget about what's being
away.
done with the Sikhs and the Christians living there and the minorities primarily, whether they are Jains or Dalits.
Right, this is what Mr. Shariar earlier talked about. What we need the world to understand is India and the fact that, of course, this is state terrorism that India is actually engaging in and doing. And this is what we need to make sure that the world understands. Ms. Sarkaman, we're short of time, so we're just going to talk about how exactly we've seen that Pakistan has made remarkable efforts in terms of various platforms and raising the voice. And we've seen that perhaps we have seen some sort of response which has been different at the United Nations. And so what else can we do to actually change this mindset of the world that India is actually engaged in state terrorism, and it's a volatile country which can affect the entire world?
Yeah, thank you. I would like to carry the debate forward with the very important points have been highlighted by my colleagues. But first of all, I would like to appeal through your program, as I understand that the diplomatic community must be watching the program right now, the release of Asya Andrabi. She is facing the life-threatening diseases, and she has been under arrest. She should be immediately released because her life is under threat. Secondly, I would say there are two aspects of the Kashmir issue. One is fundamental rights and the humanitarian aspect, and the second is peace and security. We need two different kinds of diplomacy for both. First of all, we need to bridge the gap between the academia and the executives, which very much exist here in Pakistan. Our academia is doing a wonderful job. They are preparing lot many reports, they are analyzing the situation. But when it comes to executive policy making, decisions are taken without giving any thought to those reports, one thing. Secondly, how long our diplomacy will continue by observing certain days, Kashmir Black Day, Kashmir Solidarity Day, Yom-e-Shohada, and now this anniversary of the assault on the Kashmir's identity. We need to rise above that. We need very effective diplomacy. India has used Bollywood to create its image. They have inducted their people in every media house, in every think tank of the world. Even you go to any US senator, or you will find, or US congressman, you'll find an Indian sitting in the executive office preparing the summaries for them. We need to have that kind of diplomacy. Our foreign missions should get targeted, oriented assignments, and that should be evaluated. Their performance should be evaluated. We should see that exactly how they are engaging, or they are just, observing these days, one day, and then it's gone. We have to highlight each and every aspect. Then it was very important aspect which was highlighted by my colleague. I would say that the regional, the other is the peace and security. When we come to the peace and security, then we have to look at the region, the role that the regional countries can play, Shanghai Cooperation Organization can play. Khurram Dastagir Khan has highlighted that. So Pakistan is now the full member of Shanghai Cooperation Organization. We need very effective diplomacy to reach out to all the countries, to reach out for the peace and security, because all roads to peace in South Asia passes through Kashmir. If there is no peace, if this issue is not resolved, there would be no peace, not only in Pakistan and India, but not all over the region.
Okay,
ma'am,
we're short of time.
yeah,
And
I think
going
we
to go
just
to
have
Dr.
a
Maria Sultan.
last quick comment from Maria. But let me put a question for you here as well. Since ma'am rightly mentioned about the days which we celebrate, and sometimes we wear the black band, and it's a cause, and we always share our time and our feelings with them. But what needs to be done? Now, looking at this is 2020. Inshallah, soon it is going to be a post-COVID world. Things would be different, would be changed. But do you think that old formulas would be still applicable, or do you think modern patterns would be very visible, and we need to do something on something which is very different, which hasn't been tested or tried before?
Faisal, I think I'm going to be very candid,
Go
considering I've got the last few minutes to speak on it. I think first and foremost, we need to understand that Kashmir is at war. That means Pakistan is at war. There is no two opinions about it, number one. Number two, we have to fight it on the front foot. It's not going to be done at the back end. It's not going to happen in, a fluid way. Second thing, while we go on a very offensive strategy, we need to do certain practical steps. First and foremost, we have to protect the Kashmiri identity. How do we do that? We need the Parliament of Azad Jammu and Kashmir to pass a resolution which says that the Kashmiris who have permanent residence before 5th of August 2019 will be given Kashmiri citizenship from Azad Jammu and Kashmir. So at least you're going to protect the identity. Second step, we will request the parliamentarians who are here, and maybe the chairman as well, and the Kashmir committee to lead that initiative, that we must extend dual citizenship to those Kashmiris who are in Indian occupied Jammu and Kashmir, so that your legal claim is at least there. Secondly, there is a lot of movement which has happened since 1945. This is not the UN of 1945.
Okay.
You have International Criminal Court, you have International Court of Justice, which is now a legally requisited party under the UN Security Council resolutions which are passed on Kashmir, that you can ask them, and they have become party to it. Both India and Pakistan have agreed to the International Court of Justice jurisdiction on it. So we must extend that, we must follow on through that. And last but not least, we must send our expert panels to various international committees, which should include parliamentarians, include Kashmiris, include experts. But most importantly, your war, your case cannot be fought by people. It has to be done by you. People are not going to be interested in the lives of Kashmiris, but it has to be us. And last but not least, one-liner, no occupation wars are ever won. Whether it is the United States, they're leaving after 20 years in Afghanistan. They left in Iraq. So if it is India, they're not going to win in Kashmir either, because it's a war which is now being fought against the people of Kashmir. And once the people stand against an occupation
and they have
force,
been standing there, of
it
course, and they are very,
always
very
goes
resilient.
in the other direction.
Mr. Shariar, you would like to say something? And last comments, please.
Well, one thing which is of immense importance for all of us, that Indian narratives needs to be challenged now. For example, they usually come up with that it's a bilateral issue. No, it's an international armed conflict. It's about international humanitarian, it's an international humanitarian crisis. War zone sort of activities are taking place. War crimes are taking place. So out of the box ideas, and the world needs to be conveyed a message which they understand. For example, one footage of that Syrian child was enough. So we need to be very proactive, and then I would, through your program, I would request all those colleagues who are here today, and then all those who have contributed, they need to come forward. I, as a student, and I, as a key stakeholder of the parliament, welcome all those opinion and suggestions. And then again, it applies on those overseas Pakistani diaspora too, Kashmiri diaspora too. Together as a team, definitely we can compete Indians, and we can make the whole world realize that Indians' brutality, it's enough now, and the true face of India is already exposed.
Right.
The
challenge is not only a government, but Parliament, the whole nation, is in the 21st century. This struggle for the rights of Kashmiris has to be fought at so many multiple levels all at once. It isn't that you can do diplomacy first and do the parliament. You really have to do a parallel effort at all these fronts in order to highlight the fact, not only the law effect, of course, the human rights issue, and also the chance of dispute in, these are three nuclear powers that are vying over Kashmir. So it's all these questions have to be raised, and this is, we should realize, is not a short-term effort. It's a long-term effort, but every day of that long-term effort has to be conducted with full vigor and their commitment to our brothers and sisters in Kashmir.
Right.
I think these new alliances which are taking place in the region, we need to monitor that very closely, because it's China and Pakistan, is China and Iran, is China and other countries. Okay, it's China versus India. So you can see that in this region especially, China is taking the lead, and even Afghanistan has indicated that they would like to have some sort of a relationship with China on the basis of what they had with Pakistan. So we can see a change coming in this region as far as the alliances are concerned. India will be the only country in this region which would have its alliance with another country, which is the United States. Okay, and even the European are going to take very independent positions in the coming months and years. And the most important thing which India needs to realize is that the American economy is going downhill. And the American currency, the hard currency the whole world is using, can be replaced in the next 5 to 10 years. So all these things should be assessed by our Foreign Office, all these things should be assessed by our policymakers, and it needs to be discussed in the Parliament so they can come up with one policy which can be called as the National Action Plan, and that should be implemented.
Right. Thank you very much to all our esteemed guests who joined us even before the break and right now who are with us as well. And Faisal, I believe that the take home of today's discussion is that since a year has passed since the revocation of Article 370 and 35A, since the 5th of August last year, it's not only that the sufferings of the Kashmiri people have worsened and increased, it's also that the challenges for us as a country and a nation have also increased in terms of actually making sure that we...
realities have changed.
Right.
Now,
We actually employ new methods and better techniques in making sure that we highlight this issue and make the international community realize that they are responsible to do something about this.
And they have to, because when we talk about Kashmir, it's a nuclear flashpoint. And it is not only now between Pakistan and India. It's about 3 countries now. China is included as well. So if you want peace in the region, Kashmir issue is the first and the foremost issue that needs to be sorted out.
Absolutely. And of course, we will continue to making sure that this issue is highlighted and that we are there in all kinds of support for our Kashmiri brethren. Of course, they are very, very resilient. We hope their suffering ends soon.
Inshallah. Thank you very much for watching our program. Inshallah, we'll see you again. Till then, you take good care of yourself. Khuda Hafiz.